On a quiet Saturday morning, Doug's routine car wash turned into a nightmare when his fingers discovered a strange device beneath his vehicle, a GPS tracker. Paranoia consumed him as mysterious incidents multiplied, from suspicious cars following him to hang-up calls at home. Desperate for answers, Doug contacted a cybersecurity expert to trace the tracker's origin. When the purchase records finally appeared on the screen, his entire world collapsed. The morning sun filtered through the trees as Doug Henderson knelt beside his car, working methodically with a sponge and bucket. It was his Saturday ritual, washing his sedan by hand rather than taking it through the drive-through car wash. He enjoyed these peaceful moments alone with his thoughts. As Doug reached underneath to clean the bottom edge of the vehicle, his fingers brushed against something that didn't belong. Frowning, he bent lower, his cheek nearly touching the driveway as he peered underneath. There, tucked against a crossbar, sat a small black device with a faint blinking light. Doug felt a chill run through his body despite the warm morning. With cautious fingers, he detached the object and pulled it out. The device fit in his palm, a sleek black box with only a small serial number printed on the bottom. Even with limited technical knowledge, Doug recognized what he was holding, a GPS tracker. His heart rate accelerated. Someone had been monitoring his movements. Every drive to work, every errand, every visit to friends. Someone knew exactly where he'd been. The realization made his skin crawl. How long had it been there? Who would want to track him? With the tracker clutched tightly in his hand, Doug abandoned the half-washed car and hurried inside. Sarah was in the kitchen preparing lunch. When she turned and saw his expression, concern immediately washed over her face. Doug held out his palm, displaying the black device. Sarah's eyes widened as she stared at the tracker. She took a step back, bumping against the kitchen counter. Her face drained of color as she asked where he had found it. Doug explained about discovering it under the car, and Sarah immediately suggested they call the police. Doug hesitated. He wanted to investigate first, figure out what they were dealing with. Sarah disagreed vehemently, insisting they needed professional help. Throughout the afternoon, she kept checking outside the windows, peering through the blinds at the street. She even suggested they search the entire house for other surveillance devices. That night, neither of them slept well. Doug lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with possibilities. Next to him, Sarah tossed and turned, her breathing never settling into the rhythm of deep sleep. The following Monday, Doug took his usual route to work, but today everything felt different. Every car behind him seemed suspicious. At a stoplight, he studied the rearview mirror intently, searching for any sign that he was being followed. The ordinary commute had transformed into a scene from a spy thriller, with Doug cast as the unwitting protagonist. That evening, the home phone rang. Doug answered, but there was nothing but silence on the other end before the call disconnected. It happened again the next day and the day after. Always the same. A call, silence, then nothing. Sarah suggested they change their number, her anxiety visibly mounting with each mysterious call. Doug began taking different routes to work, thinking someone was following him. Night after night, sleep eluded them both. They weren't wealthy and didn't have enemies, just an ordinary couple living an ordinary life. Or at least that's what Doug had believed until now. After enduring 2 weeks of mounting fear and sleep deprivation, Doug's nerves were frayed to the breaking point. Remembering that his former college roommate, Adrian, now worked in cybersecurity, Doug reached out for help. Adrian examined the tracker over lunch at a cafe far from Doug's usual haunts. His expression grew serious as he explained that this wasn't some cheap tracker from electronics stores. He told Doug that someone had invested significant money in monitoring Doug's movements. Adrian promised to see what information he could extract from the device. He tried to trace its purchase history through the serial number. A long shot, but their best hope for answers. 3 days later, Adrian called with a strange, hesitant voice. He'd managed to trace the purchase history of the tracker through industry contacts. They arranged to meet that afternoon. In the cafe, Adrian slid a folder across the table. Doug opened it with trembling fingers, expecting to see the name of some stranger. Instead, the floor seemed to drop from beneath him as he stared at the purchase record. The GPS tracker had been bought online 6 weeks earlier, The credit card used belonged to Sarah Henderson. The drive home passed in a blur. Doug's mind raced with possibilities, each more painful than the last. That evening, the atmosphere in their home crackled with unspoken tension. Finally, when they sat down for dinner, Doug confronted her directly. He asked if she knew anything about the GPS tracker, studying her face carefully as he spoke. Sarah vehemently denied any involvement, her voice rising with indignation. She appeared genuinely offended by the suggestion, demanding to know why he would accuse her of such a thing. Without a word, he retrieved the purchase record from his briefcase and slid it across the table. Sarah's eyes fell to the document, and her expression changed instantly. The color drained from her face as she stared at the evidence of her deception. Through tears, Sarah confessed. She'd placed the tracker because she suspected Doug was having an affair. His late nights at work and weekend errands that took hours had triggered her insecurities. Sarah's confession left Doug stunned. Despite agreeing to move past it, Doug couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Sarah's explanation made sense on the surface, but her reaction to finding the tracker had been too extreme. Why had she immediately pushed to call the police if she'd planted it herself? The following weekend, Doug told Sarah he needed to attend an industry conference in a neighboring city, but instead of leaving town, he parked down the street and waited. An hour later, Sarah emerged from their home, dressed more carefully than usual for a weekend alone. She got into her car and drove away. Doug followed at a safe distance. His suspicions grew as Sarah drove to an upscale apartment building on the other side of town. She parked and walked toward the entrance. As he rounded the corner to the building's entrance, Doug stopped dead in his tracks. There in the courtyard, Sarah stood wrapped in the arms of a tall, well-dressed man. The stranger bent down and kissed her. Not a friendly greeting, but the intimate kiss of lovers. Doug quickly pulled out his phone, his hands shaking with anger and betrayal as he recorded the evidence. When Sarah returned home Sunday evening, Doug was waiting in the darkened living room. Without speaking, he turned on the TV, where he had queued up the video from his phone. Sarah froze in the doorway as the footage played, showing her passionate embrace with her lover. In the bitter confrontation that followed, the full truth emerged. Sarah had been having an affair for months with a wealthy client from her real estate firm. She had placed the tracker on Doug's car, not out of suspicion that he was cheating, but to ensure she knew his whereabouts so she could meet her lover without risk of discovery. Her performance had all been calculated to divert suspicion from herself. As dawn broke, Doug packed his bags while Sarah alternated between tearful pleas for forgiveness and angry accusations. The small black device that had started it all now sat on the kitchen table between them, a cold metal reminder of the trust that had been irreparably broken. Doug walked out the door, leaving the tracker behind. Sarah could keep it as a souvenir of the marriage she had destroyed. Have you ever discovered a betrayal that made you question everything you thought you knew about someone close to you? How would you have reacted in Doug's position?